You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 Gov.biz Radio, a CBS station.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. You are listening to us on CBS radio station 1580 AM in the Washington, D.C. area, or on the web, WMCLive.com, where you can also find links to podcasts of previous shows. And we want to hear from you, too. Tweet us at hashtag WMCLive or email us at womensmediacenterlive@gmail.com. We have been pretty U.S.-focused recently, but quite a few of you especially liked our Vandana Shiva interview. So today we're looking beyond our shores again, with a report on women in the Syrian diaspora and another on activism about violence against women in the Middle East. We also look at what pro-woman U.S. immigration policy just might be. And we interview a feminist in, you'll never guess, Kurdistan. Plus a new feature, the Surrealism Corner. But first we need to go behind the headlines. It's been a busy news week. There was Lance Armstrong's confession of doping to Oprah, who later expressed dismay that in effect he hadn't wept and shown enough sincerity. I don't know. I'm pretty cynical about the sports industry in this country. The epidemic of doping and corruption and child molestation and brain injuries from bashing about on football fields. If, as reported, the only reason Armstrong came clean was that the cancer-fighting foundation he started was now losing donors, and he couldn't bear for that one decent legacy to go down, then I have to admit that's in his favor, for me. But, frankly, someone who's beaten testicular cancer and still rides around on those crotch-torturing bike seats is beyond my comprehension anyway. Then there was the maniacal gun defender, hyperventilating all over Piers Morgan, whose sleazy British tabloidness, despite his newfound admirable stand on gun control, made it seem as if they almost deserved each other. Speaking of which, kudos to New York State Governor Cuomo, normally not my kind of guy, and the State Assembly and Senate, normally not, etc., for passing the first and most comprehensive state gun law in the country this time around. Also, this week, Defense Secretary Leon Panetta lifted the ban on women serving in combat, and that makes promotion available to women who have been in combat realistically all along, but who weren't named as such. Women have been wounded, women have died in Afghanistan and Iraq. So this is a big win for G.I. Janes. But the inauguration trumps every story this week. Pomps, parades, floats, state pride, marching bands, corny costumes, sentimentality, patriotism, prayers. These are a few of my not favorite things. Yet merely Evers Williams delivering a social justice invocation was very moving to me, not least because she's a woman, a journalist, and an activist, not clergy. When the Brooklyn Tabernacle, not Mormon, get it? Choir let loose with Battle Hymn of the Republic, I turned to Jello. I always do, despite the distressing lyrics. And I noticed the president brushed a tear away, too. The young, gay, Latino poet must have caused Republican indigestion just by standing there, much less reading. But mostly I was moved by the inauguration speech. A throw down the gauntlet, my last chance, let's make history approach, that reached for everything from Seneca Falls to Stonewall, climate change to jobs, Selma to Newtown, poor people to rich people. With the naming of each issue, you could almost hear conservatives' pacemakers clicking on to avert mass cardiac infarctions on the VIP platform. Oops, Justice Scalia has collapsed, absurd canonical Beretta and all. Oh dear, 5 red state governors just keeled over. Tisk, tisk, there goes Paul Ryan, so young to have a stroke. Good for you, Mr. President. I know you'll disappoint us. I know you'll have to. But even if you can't get the agenda into full action, some things were named that day that have never been articulated in an inaugural address because they were considered literally unspeakable. I believe in the power of naming. That in itself is action. Our first guest is Safa Sankari, a Syrian American who works with the Women's Media Center's Women Under Siege project that uses crowd mapping to report sexualized violence against women in Syria. Safa is a writer and activist based in Michigan, where she also heads the Syrian American Medical Society chapter, and she still has family in Aleppo. Welcome, Safa, to Women's Media Center Live. You are, of course, one of our Syrian American researchers on the Women's Media Center Women Under Siege project, but I want to talk more about your own experiences as a Syrian American and what you're hearing from your family in Aleppo.
Actually, the situation in Aleppo has deteriorated quite quickly in the past several months. I have a lot of family that has had to actually leave. I have an elderly grandma who's in her 90s. They've had to take her to Turkey because the situation in Aleppo, there's no electricity, there's no water, it's very cold, there's no heating fuel. So the situation has been very bad. So she's been one of the lucky ones. They've been able to take her with my uncle and my aunt. They've been able to go to Turkey to keep her more comfortable. However, I have the rest of my family. I have uncles and aunts. My elderly grandfather, who's also in his 90s, they're still in Aleppo.
Oh. And the fallout on women, I mean, we know from the crowd mapping technique on the Women Under Siege site, we know about the violence against women and the rapes. But the other fallout on women in this kind of situation is absolutely humongous. Bread lines and inability to get food and have to provide for children. Talk a little bit about what's been happening in that respect.
Yeah, it's been very difficult on women and children, especially in Aleppo, because a lot of the casualties have been fathers, have been men. So there's a lot of young women with young children who are, being widowed and left to take care of these young children. And there's no source of income. There's no way to provide for these children. So I think in the end, in general, even in any conflict, the women and the children are the ones who usually suffer the most.
Yeah.
And there have been many pictures where, especially in Aleppo, where the regime has been targeting bread lines, where people go in line for bread. And you see the casualties, and you see just little children. They have to go in the morning and wait in these long lines just to get bread. And they're risking their lives because many of these bread lines that are in the morning are being targeted by the regimes. They're being bombed. So it's a really distressing situation for the women and children in that respect.
How do they literally survive at all? I mean, if there's no means of income, there's the extended family structure sort of expands further and gives them some shelter?
I know a lot of relief agencies that have been trying to help, trying to get aid into the areas. I know personally, I've been talking to some people with some relief agencies. They're trying to get basics to these families: bread, rice, some of the basics. So a lot of these women and children, they're basically living on these handouts. Yeah. But again, even that, it's not enough. Aleppo, and specifically Aleppo, it was a population of 4 million. Now they say it's dwindled down to 2 million. Whoever could leave has left. But even for 2 million people, it's how do you get so much basics to all these people when there's no safety? People, it's not even safe to leave their home. A lot of these people can't even leave their homes because of the shelling, because of the constant fighting. Yeah. So they're basically barely just getting by whatever relief organizations can give them. And again, the cold is really what's killing them right now. It's
of course
really cold. It's snowing, and no electricity, no heating fuel. It's a really dire situation right there right now.
It's a humanitarian crisis. The expat Syrian community, those who got away into, say, Europe or the United States, what are they able to do in this circumstance, and what's the fallout on them?
Well, actually, the expat Syrian community is really trying to help as much as they can. I'm part of the Syrian American Medical Society local Michigan chapter foundation, and we've been as a community trying to support in any ways we can. Our focus has specifically been medical. So the SAMS, or the Syrian American Medical Society, has been able to establish field hospitals, send medical supplies, support the refugees. We've also even sponsored a psychosocial clinic in Jordan to help with, the mental fallout that's definitely affecting the Syrian refugees after all that they've been going through.
Of course.
So in general, I'd say the Syrian expat community has really stepped up to the plate, and they're basically trying to help as much as they can, because honestly, the Syrian people and the Syrian expat community feels like the world is ignoring them. They feel no one is helping. It's all just talk. The killing is continuing. The suffering is continuing. People are dying. People are starving. And, all these governments, even the UN, everyone feels like it's just talk, and nothing is ending the suffering that's been going on now for almost 2 years. In March, it'll be 2 years.
Yeah. There's always a process of committees and studies and meetings, and then once the atrocities have taken place, whether it's in Rwanda or was in Bosnia, then the world says, "Oh my God, how could we have let this happen? We must never let it happen again." And then it happens again.
Absolutely. I've had so many of those conversations with our friends, and I have Bosnian friends who told me, we went through the exact same thing, especially, with the issue of women being raped and the violence and the killing and the hunger and the cold, and everyone swore we can't let this happen again. And like you said, it's happening again and again, and you just wonder, when will the world learn its lesson to not allow this to happen?
Well, the good thing about our species, I sometimes think, is that we are incredibly adaptable. But the bad thing is that it takes us forever to get it on board and adapt.
Yes, and I think we forget quickly as well. I think it's so easy to forget about something, or even, sometimes even here as Americans, we live, we're very comfortable, we're very well off compared to, all these other places, and it seems so far away that, with our daily lives, it's easy to forget about the suffering that happened, thousands of miles away.
Of course it is.
And I think that's something that, as the Syrian expat community is trying, is at least trying to bring awareness to people, to let them know, whether on social media or within their communities, to let them be aware of this crisis that's going on. That the Syrian people, they're just like any other people. They're just like any American who just wants to live a decent life with dignity, to be able to provide for his or her family, and to make sure his child can just eat and be warm at night, and maybe eventually get an education, and just live a productive life in society. They're no different than any other people.
Safa, in addition to going to the website of Women Under Siege and learning more about this, and particularly the impact on women, is there a website or an address that people can donate to or get involved in that you'd like to give?
Absolutely. Like I said, I'm part of the Syrian American Medical Society, local Michigan chapter, but the national also has a website. It's called SAMS-USA.net. And there, people can see how SAMS has been really helping with the medical crisis, get updates on the situation there, and they can definitely donate to help with the medical relief.
That's wonderful, because we have activist listeners, so that they don't like to be alerted to something without being helped to do something about it. Thank you so much. Shukran Atir, and all love and strength beams in your direction. This will end, and we're going to try to end it sooner rather than later. But thank you for the work that you're doing.
Thank you for bringing awareness to this situation.
We need to pause for a short break here. This is Women's Media Center Live, and I'm Robin Morgan. We'll be back with the woman who founded a regional women's rights alliance based in Cairo, and it's aptly named Dignity, in just a minute. After Hurricane Sandy, parts of the East Coast have returned to normal, but others won't see normal again for quite some time. One group getting volunteers and aid supplies to those who need it is called Occupy Sandy. made up of a coalition of Occupy Wall Street activists, community organizers, and technologists. Occupy Sandy is using social media and other software tools to identify and quickly respond to urgent needs among the hardest-hit communities. You can help. To donate or to volunteer, visit occupysandy.org.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 gov.biz radio, a CBS station.
And we're back. Next, we're going to Cairo, the headquarters of Karama, or Dignity, which has forged an unprecedented regional partnership with women's organizations in Algeria, Egypt, Iraq, Jordan, Lebanon, Libya, Morocco, Palestine, Sudan, Syria, Tunisia, and Yemen. Hibaaq Osman, our guest, is Karama's founder and CEO. She and Karama were honored at the annual meeting of the Clinton Global Initiative in both 2009 and 2011. Hibaaq, welcome to Women's Media Center Live.
Thank you very much for this opportunity, Robin. It's great to be with you.
We're friends and colleagues in the global women's movement, and we're honored to have you here.
You're my teacher. I'm your student.
Oh, yeah, right. Therein lies a trap. I've learned far more from you than the other way around. But anyway, we're stuck in this together till we change and save the world. Ho hum, saving the world. So tell our listeners about Karama. You describe it better than I can, and the three areas of focus and the remarkable work that you do.
Thank you. Karama means dignity, and women's rights to me always meant dignity. And this is a group of women, a coalition of organizations that work on ending violence against women, and but looking at violence against women from different perspectives, from the economical to political to the social. And the revolutions that have happened in the Middle East has given us a chance to basically start over again, and to be at the forefront of a revolution that's happening. And it was when the women in the different countries, in Tunis and Egypt, when the women came to the Tahrir Square or Freedom Squares, that's when the revolution got legitimacy. The surprise was, here the women were, and you have seen them on TV, and many people read about them in newspapers, were at the forefront. They were praying together with the men, holding hands with the men, shouting together, throwing the stones together, protecting each other. And as the revolution was unfolding, let's say in Egypt, the extremists who absolutely wanted to curtail women's rights were working against them.
And now they've taken over, or they're trying to.
Absolutely. So the idea was the revolution was happening in February. In March, they were already making recommendations to the government to take all the rights that women have gained, the right to custody, the right to divorce, the right to travel. They were absolutely...
They want to turn the clock backwards.
They wanted to turn the clock. So the revolution that was supposed to be moving forward...
Well, this must be an area where Karama is particularly active. What impresses me always about your group is that it has this holistic approach. It's it's a cascading movement, both national and regional. And you have, tell me if I'm wrong, as I recollect, 3 urgent program areas: fighting for women's rights, strengthening support services against violence, so it's very practical, and building global and local awareness. And partners all over, Algeria, Egypt. You're based in Cairo, right?
Absolutely. And I think the way we do it, for example, is to prepare women for the transition. We're working with women to work on the Constitution by providing them the training, by identifying key women who are experts on Constitution. So when the Constitution the constitution that's going to be written for Egypt, you have women who would be in the drafting committee. That way, you're promoting and protecting women's rights and making sure that women's rights are promoted in the constitution.
And the coalition that you have with groups in all over Jordan, Lebanon, Libya, Morocco, Palestine, Sudan, Syria, Tunisia, etc. There's strength in that unity, I presume, because this is the rollback of women's rights, or the attempted rollback is everywhere, right?
Absolutely. The idea is always strengthening what they have already started on the ground, because there is no country that I have worked on that did not have women who were working on women's rights or promoting women's rights.
Yes.
But if they don't have the right resources, and this is where we come in, if they don't have the right training, if they don't have exposure, if they don't have someone introducing them, the experience of the Robins of this world, they wouldn't know. It would not be. It wouldn't really. It wouldn't be strong. And the other thing that we have is we are giving women, basically introducing them also to the international politics, which means all of these countries are accepting money and resources from other countries like the U.S. and Europe, but making sure that women also have a voice, and talking to parliamentarians and talking to politicians and giving them the real information. So when the decision of how much money you are going to give to Egypt, or what you are going to do in Egypt or Libya or anywhere, then you are making a decision on informed. You are informed, and you have the right, you have the right information. So the women are influencing that, and that's the highest level, which of course usually governments and men don't expect women to be in certain levels. So we're doing from the national to the regional to the international. But what just happened in Libya was very interesting, where for 42 years you didn't have civil society. But the minute the revolution happened, you did not only have civil society, but you had a society that really made the revolution to happen, and women were a major part of that.
I know.
So, and the other thing is, when the elections came, none of the political parties really wanted to put women at the forefront. They did not. They rejected the idea of having a quota for women in Libya. And then the women came up with another law and said, we want you to use the super law. We want every political party to have man, woman, woman, man. We want it to be that way.
Wow.
And don't you know? Out of the 40, so the compromise was to have 40 women assigned. It was not a quota, but they said out of the 120 seats, 40 will be for women. And don't you know, 33 women who never ran for office won that election.
Wow.
33 of them. One of the women told us, she was one of the people that, came through Karama, and told us, I would never run for political office. I don't even know what it is. And within 3 months, because of the exposure and because of all these trainings, that woman, and she was a conservative woman, that woman ran for office and won.
That's a fast learning curve.
It is.
We have to stop now, and it breaks my heart because we could go on forever. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for your marvelous statements and writings about the invisible burqa that all women wear, and thank you for everything that you do for women, not only in the Middle East and North Africa, but all over the world.
Thank you.
And we have a new feature this week. I'm calling it the Surrealism Corner. The Surrealism Corner is when you hear or read something and you feel like going there and curling in a fetal position and gibbering. Or another way of relating to the Surrealism Corner is to laugh uproariously. Myself, I tend to do all three. It's just short items, some of which don't even require comment. You may by now have heard about the first one, which is a new app from the NRA, our favorite group, which means that even 4-year-olds can use an AK-47 to shoot targets that are shaped, conveniently, like coffins. I'm tempted to sing da-da-da-da-da-da-da, the Twilight Zone song. And then Texas is the next item in the surrealism zone, which there's a Texas lawmaker who plans to file a bill called the Firearms Protection Act, because firearms really need protection. This would make any federal laws that might be passed by Congress or imposed by presidential order that would ban or restrict ownership of automatic or semi-automatic firearms, or limit the size of gun magazines, or make them illegal in the state. If a federal official comes into the state of Texas to enforce the federal executive order, that person will be subject to criminal prosecution, punishable by a $50,000 fine and up to 5 years in prison. Although this is unconstitutional, this guy, who his name is State Representative Steve Toth, Republican of Texas, words we'd love, says the supremacy clause in the Constitution, which gives the federal government the power to do this, well, this law, the Texas law, would basically trump the Constitution, which is wrong. We want to do everything we can to undermine that. By the way, on gun control, there's two groups that have come to mind. 1 Million Moms for Gun Control is a new one. You can find it on the web. And Harlem Mothers Save for people who are on the East Coast. Those are both very mother and child oriented, but I haven't come across any child-free ones, but I'm sure they're out there. Meanwhile, for moms who want to get involved, those two are interesting. Now, a lateral leap into salaries comparatively. I'm just going to list these. They're self-explanatory. Get ready to curl into a fetal position. Salary of retired U.S. presidents, $180,000 for life. Salary of House and Senate members, $174,000 for life. Salary of the Speaker of the House, $223,500 for life. Salary of majority and minority leaders, $193,400 for life. Now, the average salary of a teacher, $40,000. The average salary of a soldier deployed in Afghanistan, $38,000. Gibber. Here's a fun one. There's a pants 20 years ago, this January. No, I'm longer. Sorry, on January 20th in 1970, there was a pants-in at CBS among media women. And the question that they asked on their signs were, are media women second-class citizens like their sisters in banking, business, and the academy? It was because there was an unwritten rule that although men could have beards and wear jeans, particularly in the news department, women, even in the coldest days of winter, couldn't wear pants. If that seems to you archaic, by the way, you should know that last month, there was a statewide Wear Pants to Church Day in Utah. So we all come to these magic moments in our own time, but that's kind of a special one. And then last, in this week's Surrealism Corner, an 11-year-old girl was kicked off the football team by the Philadelphia Archdiocese. The all-star Catholic youth organization football player Carolyn Pla, P-L-A, was told that she can't play because football is for boys. And there's a petition on change.org. Her name is Carolyn Pla, P-L-A, a petition to get the Archdiocese to reverse its decision. I mean, obviously, girls are not supposed to be on football fields. Girls are supposed to be in the confessional where they can be molested along with boys. So that's it kind of for today. Do me a favor, though, please. Send me candidates for the Surrealism Room. I know you have them. I know that you know that they're out there. You can hashtag us. You can tweet us at hashtag WMC Live, or Women's Media Center Live at gmail.com is where you can email us. And I'd love to hear your candidates, and I'll read them on the air. Now it's break time again. I'm Robin Morgan, and this is Women's Media Center Live. What might a pro-woman, family-friendly U.S. immigration policy look like? Well, we'll find out when we come right back. Anyone in the Dallas, Texas area on Friday, February 8th is in for a treat. The Dallas Women's Foundation and the Embry Family Foundation are sponsoring an in-depth look at how we can change gender stereotypes in media and entertainment. There'll be a forum, panel discussions, and a luncheon, and the keynote speaker is Julie Burton, president of the Women's Media Center. It's all at the Doubletree by Hilton Dallas Campbell Center on February 8th in Dallas. But seating's limited. For more information on the Gender in Media Forum and Luncheon and to register, go to dallaswomensfoundation.org.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 gov.biz radio, a CBS station.
And welcome back. Our next guest, Maria Echaveste, the co-founder and partner of Nueva Vista Group, has had a distinguished career as a senior White House official, a longtime community leader, and an attorney. She served as assistant to the president and deputy chief of staff for President Clinton, with oversight responsibility for many of his domestic policy initiatives, including civil rights and immigration. Welcome, Maria, to Women's Media Center Live. Thank you for being with us.
My pleasure.
I want to ask you, it's a rare chance, about policy, women, and immigration. How do we get policy to address more the actual needs of women in terms of not only community organizing, but in terms of immigration law and immigration policy?
I think that there are a couple of areas in which women's role in the immigration debate perhaps hasn't been thought through as carefully as the broader debate has raged. And one is the level of deportations which this administration has overseen has impacted families in such dramatic and devastating ways.
Of course.
And as we know, women tend to be the backbones of those families, like any family.
Yep.
And so what is not really understood is both as women who have partners who were either deported, or as women themselves, as mothers and wives, have been deported, the whole question of the impact on children and those broken families. So fast forward. An immigration policy package has to really, I think, look at, well, over 400,000 people have been deported each of the last few years. What happens to those women, either who stayed here, whose partners left, or those women who've been deported? How do you resolve that? How do you put them in a line, shall we say, that allows them to be reunited with their children and their families? And frankly, no one's really talking about that. They're talking about what to do for the current undocumented, the 11 million, which is hugely important. But what about those who have been deported? We have so many U.S.-born children whose families have been under siege because of the threat of deportation, that I think that there are some ideas that we need to be considering, whether they can come in as on visas that allow them to be united, not to take a jump in the line, if you will, but really be more humane about this cost of enforcing our immigration policy.
Isn't it interesting, Maria, that I say this cynically, that so many of the same folks who, will praise the family in the abstract and say women shouldn't be working outside the home, who in many cases they oppose women's reproductive rights because women should be bearing more children. Some of them are extreme religious fundamentalists, some of them are just very ultra-right, but the family and children, and when it comes to an issue like this, seem to have very little compunction about breaking up families.
That's exactly right. And it really is an amazing hypocrisy.
Totally.
An amazing hypocrisy. And the other hypocrisy, which, again, affects women, is as we design, one of the elements that's going to get debated very, very seriously, hotly, will be what kind of future worker program, otherwise known as a guest worker program. And people have been really fighting tooth and nail on this. And I am one who several years ago came to the reluctant conclusion that unless we had some type of program to have people come in with legal papers, we would find ourselves in the same situation that the 1986 law brought us, which is it legalized almost 4 million people, and then 20 years later, because there were no real legal channels to deal with the demand for labor, we end up with 11, 12 million people undocumented, right?
Right.
So what is the shape of that program? And I say this also as a daughter of a bracero, meaning a guest worker who came in the 50s, worked in agriculture, and who I grew up listening to the tremendous stories of abuses and exploitation and contracts broken, and the way in which these workers were treated so inhumanely. So I've concluded that to avoid having yet another burgeoning population of undocumented, we need some type of future worker program, but it has to be different from the past.
Yes.
And this is where you really see the difference between Republican and Democrat. Frankly, Republicans, it kind of goes with that hypocrisy. They really, most of them want a guest worker program, but they want a program where you bring people in for a couple years, maybe 4 years, and they have to leave. They don't want people here. Exactly. They want them to be simply a worker, a cog, as if they don't have lives, as if they don't have relationships, and then you have to leave. Really basically disposable workers.
That's right.
That's what they want.
Marginal.
Yeah, exactly. Marginal workers. And so we can't have that. It's inhumane, it's not right, and it's exploitative. So can we design a program in which workers can come in with protections and ability to organize if they want to join a union.
Yes.
Full protections under labor rights, real wages that allow them to live here and not be a drain on the surrounding community. Mm-hmm. My favorite example in that is the Central Valley and agriculture. Because agriculture continues to pay so little, these workers come in, but they live in the community. You'll have 20, 25 people in a 3-bedroom house.
Sure.
Because there's no housing provided. So anyway, how do we design a program? And the key element, I think, is that you can come in and employer sponsors, but if the employer breaks the contract, or you can go to another, you need to be able to move to another employer.
That's right.
It's really the market, right? If you a better employer.
Exactly. As opposed to Romney's, vision of, quote, self-deporting.
Right.
You remember self-deporting? Yeah, that was a sweet one.
But the other thing would be to allow these workers to come in, and after a period of time, let's say 5 years, they've been coming back, they've been working, and they decide they actually want to stay in this country. And by the way, not everybody will. There are many families that I know who really want to be able to come and work for 6 months, 9 months, and then go back to their country.
Yeah.
Fine. But there's a chunk of people who will decide they got married, they decide they want to stay here.
The point is they should have the choice.
Exactly. They should have the choice. They should be able to decide whether they stay. And I think that that's going to be one of the key elements, because I certainly will not be supportive of a program that's just a repeat of the Bracero program, but I will support a future worker program where the worker is able to legalize and make an application, not dependent upon the employer sponsoring him, because then that leads to abuses. And then one of those areas that is really, again, relating to women is so many immigrant women are here working, taking care of our children, helping us clean our houses,
that's right,
helping take care of our parents.
Yep.
So unless there's a program that allows people to come in here legally to do that kind of work, we won't. We will end up having more undocumented because the demand is there. Let's understand, women make up 50% of the workforce in America, and we're not going back.
Right.
And many of us work because we have to, and many of us work because we want to.
Yeah.
And that means we need help at home, with our kids, with our home.
That's right.
And why do we treat them as if they're invisible, but they're absolutely essential?
They're essential. They're skilled workers. They are dealing with, in effect, the most important people in Americans' lives. You know, their elderly parents and their children. So this ought to be a position treated with the utmost respect and dignity. Well, I knew that we'd hear smart and interesting plans from you. I would hope that your plan takes center stage, and I will be on the outlook for it. And I thank you very much for being with us today.
Sure, Robin. Bye.
Time for another pause. I'm Robin Morgan, here with Women's Media Center Live. When we return, we will boldly go where no feminism has gone before. But it's there now. Don't go away.
If you ever need an organ transplant, you will probably die before you get one. Thousands of Americans die waiting every year. You can improve your odds by joining LifeSharers, and it's free. Visit lifesharers.org or call 888-ORGAN-88. LifeSharers puts organ donors first. When you join LifeSharers, you get preferred access to the organs of other members. This could literally save your life. Join LifeSharers today. There's no age limit, parents can enroll their minor children, and no one is excluded due to any pre-existing medical condition. Call 888-ORGAN-88 or visit lifesharers.org. That's LifeSharers.org. LifeSharers. It's free. It could save your life.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 gov.biz radio, a CBS station.
And we're back again, this time with Ruwayda Mustafa, all the way from Kurdistan, where she and other women are founding a feminist movement. She blogs for Huffington Post and for Global Voices, and she has a large following on Twitter. Welcome, Ruwayda, to Women's Media Center Live.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be with you.
Well, it's very exciting for us because the motto of the Women's Media Center is to make women visible and powerful in the media, and because the media conveys the information to the world. And we don't want that controlled by white males. And part of the problem, I think, about Kurdistan is that people don't know about it. Not only here in the United States, but in the world at large. There's a kind of, oh yes, Kurdistan. Is that near Afghanistan? Is that somewhere in the stands? What is it? Is they tribes? Or else they know only the ghastly old news item that Saddam Hussein had once gassed the Kurds. So I think it's really exciting to learn that there are feminists alive and well and fighting the good fight in Kurdistan, which is probably one of the hardest places in the world to organize. So talk about that and how you as a Kurdish feminist came to this and the work that you're doing.
In Kurdistan, the reason why people don't know much about it is because during Saddam Hussein's reign, or rather unfortunate decades of being in power, Kurdish people were repressed and they couldn't get their voices out. Mm-hmm. But now, because Saddam Hussein is no longer in power, we're seeing Kurdish voices rise up. And with that, we're seeing women become more vocal and vibrant in society. there's a couple of things to remember. Because Kurdistan is so diverse, you will find that in different Kurdish areas or regions, some women are more liberated than others. For example, in northern Kurdistan, the situation of women is very much different to southern Kurdistan, where I'm from. Mm-hmm. Right now, in southern Kurdistan, there are some issues that women are trying to battle out. For instance, politics remains very male-dominated. We have one female minister, and despite the fact that she's been in power for 2 terms, she's evidently done very little to encourage other women into political sort of fields. And also, in Kurdistan, the amount of scrutiny that women get, men don't get in the media. So when women are scrutinized, it's rarely because of their political views. It's more to do with the way they look, for instance, or with something they've done. And I think we see that in the West as well. But in Kurdistan, people take those attacks more personally. Mm-hmm. And women are very afraid to enter the political field in fear that they might be attacked personally. But despite that, there are so many women who are fighting day in and out to be more strong mm-hmm. on a political, social and economic level. We have women who are fighting for jobs just like men, but at the same time we don't have enough women in managerial roles. We have more men doing that. I think in a couple of years, we will have a stronger feminist presence in Kurdistan, but for the time being, we just have to not take it slow, but fight for the things that are worth it. We don't have the luxury of time, but I think things like honor killings, which are not as widespread as, but they still happen, and I think things like honor killings or abuse against women, those are important to fight for than other fights. Feminists, for example, feminists in the West tend to focus on the media and how it exploits women. In Kurdistan, we do less of that because we see other pressing things.
Yes. The earlier part of what you described, male-dominated politics, male-dominated managerial positions, and the trashing that sometimes occurs of women candidates in the media is very familiar, and we have that in the United States. One of the projects of the Women's Media Center is called Name It, Change It, or Sexism Sells, but we're not buying it. And it's about studies that have been done that prove when the media makes sexist comments about a woman candidate, it actually affects the race. It's not just good fun. On the other aspects of the more severe honor killings, honor crimes, and so forth, it's fairly rare that those occur here. But I like to say that we're all in the same boat. The costumes change, the plot is the same. I mean, women all over the world. So we look to the similarities. What is miraculous to me is that you are, as a young feminist Kurd, have been organizing, and you've been organizing sort of in consciousness raising groups and with other women, and touring the country, and you're writing a book, yes?
Yes, so my book is coming out soon, and we have a feminist society in Howler, which is sort of like the capital, and it's currently headed by someone called Ashna Sharif. She's a feminist, and she's amazing. I'm so honored to know her. In Kurdistan, she gives workshops to young women, and she teaches them how to use social media effectively, which is very important because it gives them a voice. And you have other women like Choman Herdi. She wrote an entire book on how the genocide affected women and sort of the abuse and ordeal women went through. So we have women who are working on ground. They're actively engaged with women, and at the same time we have women who were writing Kurdish history for the first time by ourselves. For much of our history, number one, women didn't get to write, and secondly, It wasn't Kurds who wrote it, and now, and I find it so interesting to see so many young and even older generation of women in Kurdistan who are writing their own history. So they're teaching generations of women to come and men to come what being Kurd has been like for the past years.
That's so
and
valuable.
In terms of activism, there is a problem in Kurdistan in terms of how feminism is perceived. Everyone thinks if you call yourself feminist, it means you're not feminine, or that you're manly, or that you want to be like a man. And these sort of characterizations are often used against women to hold them back and to make them feel inferior. And I believe that the reason why we have so many people who say you shouldn't call yourself feminist or a women's rights activist, you should just call yourself a human rights activist.
Oh, yes, I've heard that one.
They fear the fact that if women are empowered and liberated, they will not accept abuse and they will not accept to be treated as second class.
You're absolutely right.
In every Kurdish household, it is almost always the male, the head, that is seen as the head figure, even if the woman is working. And that's part of the problem in Kurdistan. We have a patriarchal society that refuses to acknowledge feminism as a legitimate movement. Sometimes it is seen as a Western movement, other times it is seen as a movement to exploit women or to make them more open socially. And by open I mean more outgoing, or if they're wearing shorts or short-sleeved tops, that's seen as somehow the effect of feminism in making women somehow bolder in society.
Right.
But on the contrary, I think if women are wearing more open clothes, it's because they want to and because they feel liberated and strong enough to do that. Whereas in the past you had women who were too afraid to dress as they pleased because they thought they will be condemned socially. But now we're seeing a new generation that don't fear what women in the past feared, and other groups see this as an effect of feminism. They think feminism is out to make women immodest or sort of strip them from their clothes.
Let me interrupt you for just a second. We have only got about a minute left, but say something quickly about the library that you are building.
We're building a library in Kurdistan. It's going to be Iraq's biggest English library, and thank you. We've got about all your books because you sent them to us, and we have in Kurdistan now. The library will have a very large feminist collection, and we are accepting donations from all over the world to send us feminist books so that we can empower young women and so we can educate them intellectually, because it's one thing to be educated within a university, it's entirely a different thing to understand patriarchy and gender discrimination.
Ruwayda, is there a link, a website that people can contact?
We're on Facebook, and we can be contacted. If you just type Vision Library on Facebook, you will have all our information there. And
on Facebook, and what is it listed as?
Vision Library.
Vision Library.
Vision Library.
Wonderful. Okay, that's a brave and beautiful thing. As are you. So thank you so much. Excuse me, if it's all right with you, we'll come back to you again and see how your organizing is.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a great pleasure to talk to your listeners.
And now it's time for Fighting Words. Do you know the real reason the Second Amendment was ratified and why it names state instead of country? I was recently reminded why, thanks to Tom Hartman. It was to preserve the militias in the southern states, necessary to get Virginia's vote for the Constitution. Founders Patrick Henry and George Mason made that a condition. The southern state militias were also called slave patrols and were well regulated by the slave states. For instance, Georgia had laws requiring all plantation owners or their male white employees to be armed members of the Georgia militia and to make monthly searches of, quote, all Negro houses for offensive weapons and ammunition, and give 20 lashes to any slave found outside plantation grounds, close quote. This was deemed necessary to preserve the institution of slavery. Today, history-deprived citizens may wonder why the enslaved population was so passive But the truth is that by the ratification of the Constitution, already hundreds of slave uprisings had erupted across the South. Oppression requires relentless enforcement, the role of the well-regulated militias. No wonder such founders as George Mason, who owned over 300 slaves, insisted on the Second Amendment. So did Patrick Henry, the Southern Christian evangelical. More on him in a minute. They worried that Article I, Section 8, which empowered the federal government to raise and supervise a national militia, would permit the swallowing up of their state militias, adapting them from slavery-enforcing private armies into a national military, permitting service, by slaves, an army that might someday free slaves. At the 1788 ratifying convention, Patrick Henry said it straight out. If there should happen an insurrection of slaves, the country cannot be said to be invaded. They cannot, therefore, suppress it. In this state, Virginia, there are 236,000 blacks, and there are many in several other states, but there are few or none in the northern states. Alarmed that government power over the state militias could be used to strip the slave states of their slave patrols, Henry added, "Have they, the government, not power to provide for the general defense and welfare? May they not think that these call for the abolition of slavery?" Yah! James Madison, father of the Constitution and a slaveholder himself, then revised the relevant amendment, changing the word country to the word state, thus ensuring that the South could maintain slave patrol militias. Oh yes, Patrick Henry? He fought Jefferson tooth and nail over the Virginia Act of Religious Freedom, a document Jefferson wrote, which, separating religion and government, became the model for the Constitution's First Amendment. Henry wanted a theocracy. And one last thing. This give me liberty or give me death guy imprisoned his wife, Sarah. She'd brought him a small plantation and 6 slaves as dowry. He then declared her mad and constrained her for the rest of her life in the cellar as a, quote, merciful alternative to putting her in an asylum. It appears from spotty reports of the time that her madness was melancholia. So much for the sacrosanct Second Amendment. Take that, NRA. And that's it for this week. You've been listening to us on CBS station 1580gov.biz AM radio in Washington, D.C., and on the web at WMClive.com, which also has podcasts of previous shows. This program, portions of it, were taped earlier. Views expressed here don't represent the WMC. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. WMC President and for this program Executive Producer Julie Burton, Senior Producer Crystal Williams Chancellor, Technical Director Michelle Kinsey Bruns, Production Assistant Nora Eakin, Board Operator James Henderson, and our founding sponsor Regina Kulik Scully. I'm Robin Morgan. Thanks for being with us. Join us next week with our guests Kim Gandy, President of the National Network to End Domestic Violence, and Kimberly Bryant, who teaches kids technology through Black Girls Code, plus author Suzanne Braun-Levine on women's second adulthood and on changes in journalism. She should know, the founding editor of Ms. Magazine and later editor of Columbia Journalism Review. Only here on Women's Media Center Live.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 gov.biz radio, a CBS station.